So, Species, The Flash, Season 6, Episode 5, Kiss Kiss, Breach Breach, I believe it was called. I kind of have mixed feelings about this episode because I feel like it does things that The Flash is or has established very well into Season 6. For example, I've been saying this every week, but you know, the separate storylines for each characters, or like the paired character storylines, and I did enjoy elements to that. Obviously, a lot of us want to know what the heck's going on with Nash Wells and that room, or more importantly, or should I say more accurately, what Mar-Novu is doing in like a kind of a sewery kind of place under Central City. And you know, I did enjoy that, even though I felt like they kind of dragged it out this episode, but that's not really too surprising with, you know, the CW kind of having like 22 episodes per season. Even though things are full steam ahead for all kind of things this season due to Crisis on Infinite Earths, it doesn't mean like things like this aren't going to be kind of put a little bit on the backbench, if you know what I mean. But either way, I did enjoy scenes like that, and this episode obviously was a very Cisco-centric episode, and to be honest, I enjoyed it for the most part. I don't see, like, a lot of people like Breacher, but I feel like ever since I first saw him, I was excited to see him come to the show, but I've always found him, like, and this is just me being completely honest, a little bit cheesy, but, like, you know, sometimes I did get quite absorbed into it, and I felt like it wasn't so heavy, you know, on the nose this episode with what I, you know, vibe with the cheesiness, but what I didn't kind of like so much, and this, I don't think I'm alone in this in particular, is Cisco's girlfriend, Camila. I liked Cisco in this episode. It was an interesting story. I felt like, you know, you could call this a filler episode in a way, but I feel like it is also important to do these sometimes. Yes, believe it or not, in terms of me saying that about filler, because, you know, you need to do character development, and this is the CW's way of doing it. And as I keep saying, these separate storylines and time dedicated to things like what we saw in this episode allow that to move forward, so that's a good thing. But back to Camila, I just don't feel, and this is no disrespect to the actress or anything like that, it's just, she doesn't really have the chemistry with Cisco, and I just don't really buy it. And not only that, I feel like every scene she's in is a bit like, you know, kind of like that. I just don't. Maybe you feel differently, but I know I'm not alone here, and I just wanted to put that out there. I just felt like this was really good for Cisco this episode, but I just don't believe this relationship they have. I've already accepted it, don't get me wrong, and it's not look like it's going to change, but I can't really compare it to that of her and Gypsy and Cisco. That was a very kind of good on-screen story, but, you know, things happen behind the scenes, like she's working on something else, and, you know, it is the way it is now. And because I've gone directly into this video, just kind of, you know, giving my thoughts straight up, I forgot to mention, if you guys are still here and you're enjoying this video, I'd really appreciate it if you like it, and just very quickly, I will have my Arrow review out a couple of hours or so after this video, so make sure you go and check that out. It will be in the cards above by the time you're watching this, if it's a few hours later. But yeah, let's start off with just the premise of the episode anyway. Barry and Iris going on holiday. I assume this is what they meant by Candice Patton's natural hair. That's all I've got to say about that, because obviously it was very curly. What a review. But you know what I mean. They went on holiday. I didn't know how to feel about it at first, but I thought, you know what, screw it. If you are convinced you're going to die, and there is a crisis that is coming, because that was my issue to begin with. I was like, guys, Crisis on Infinite Earths. But then again, you know, if Bloodwork's kind of been, you know, doing not really so much the past couple of weeks or whatever, you can, as a speedster, just have a little bit of kind of time away with your wife. So, you know, they were away this episode, but that instantly kind of set me up for, oh God, what is this episode going to be like? And it wasn't as bad as kind of what I was anticipating. Not saying that, I'm not saying that it was bad. I'm just saying I was kind of worried that it was going to be going down a much, you know, worse slope than what it actually turned out to be. So with the whole Nash Wells stuff, good on Joe, because he, as he said himself, every Wells is suspicious, and they kind of need to have one eye always on him, and he was trying to get in, and ultimately it kind of became this thing, this episode, about having faith in people. That was kind of, you know, directed in every other scene with whoever was paired with who, whether that's Ralph, Killer Frost, Cisco, his girlfriend later on was like, you need to have faith, you know, in terms of questioning the leadership skills and stuff like that. There are always these little things, and you could call this a nitpick. I'm completely fine with that. I'm not even like bringing this up as an actual critical point, but it's like, whereas Nash Wells' kind of teleporter bomb things, I guess he just happened to not have those on him. But yeah, that all got resolved, and I'm just going to dive straight into that post-credit bit right now, just because I want to talk about the related segments of this episode at a time. And that was that I think I know how to save Barry Allen. Now, I don't know how he thinks that. Obviously, there's a lot that the audience don't know that, is going on between Harrison Nash Wells and Marnovu. I've theorized what if his Earth has been destroyed, and that's how he got here, and he wants to get into that room to find out what the heck's going on, and maybe even kind of get some kind of revenge. I don't know. That's completely, really speculative, and I'm probably like 80% wrong on that. But he was just fascinated when Joe was talking about you've met Marnovu. Like I like that kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff that is drip feeding me into wanting more. And that's what I'm really enjoying. And when he said, so yeah, I think I know how to save Barry Allen, I guess he obviously thinks, I think he knows whatever's in that room because he had those plans. So I'm assuming he thinks if he gets in there, that's why he dropped the bomb saying like, well, what's in there? Well, he didn't say that. I think I know how to save Barry Allen. So let me know what you think of that down in the comments below, because other than that, we got really nothing else apart from another cool, they seem to be dropping, whether it's, better some episodes than other episodes, Joe kind of speeches. And I know like it wasn't like a proper emotional speech, but, well, it kind of was actually, going back to when his wife left him. But yeah, loved all of that. So as for the whole Cisco plot this episode, it was better than what I thought it was. I mean, even going throughout, I was like, I love Cisco and everything. Maybe it was just because Camila was so involved in it. And you could say, hey, why not? Because she essentially is a part of Team Flash now. But I just feel like she still doesn't fit properly with what they're trying to push her in as. I'm not exactly comparing it to how I feel like a lot of people were feeling as though Iris was so forced into, like, was it the Flash season 4 and stuff like that? It felt like she wasn't necessarily, it felt like they were basically forcing it, and I feel like that's what's going on with Camila. But as for Cisco, I've already voiced so much about Camila. Let's talk about him. So obviously we found out with like the beginning of the episode setting up that the Earth 19 collector agents, if you will, were going to apprehend him. It's kind of one of those predictable things. Maybe you didn't predict it, but it's not going to actually be the way they kind of perceive it, but it gives you enough of like a little tidbit to like want to follow through to know what's going on at that bit. I felt like obviously that's their intention, but I didn't really feel like that with the scene they gave. I was like, okay, like I know it's gonna be fine, if you know what I mean. But the tragedy is that when Breacher appeared is that Gypsy is dead. She got vaporized by none other than a doppelganger of Cisco named Echo. Now, what I really liked about this is that it definitely did pull some strings, like emotional strings for me, because even though Gypsy wasn't in the Flash so much, I feel like they have kind of done, quite a decent job over the seasons of setting up how much of a I don't know what the right word, it's not like inspiration, but like she holds sentimental value in this show between Cisco and that story and the fans. So when we saw Cisco struggles this episode, I really kind of felt it, I believed it, and I felt sorry for him. And a big thing about all of this as well, and probably why this episode was quite needed, not that Barry's gonna go anywhere ultimately, is that this whole leadership thing, in the brackets and in the background, is quite the thing that's being put on Cisco. So it's kind of to elevate him forward, and he solved this whole mystery by himself, even though the Earth 19 guys were against him. Even Breacher turned against him because it looked like, obviously from those vibes, that he did it. And this, I assume, will just give him the kind of confidence and encouragement that he can look after things when Barry Allen is gone. But there were touching moments where, when the whole faith thing got brought up again in the scene between Camila and Cisco, he says he has no faith in himself because he can't even save his best friend. So like that, I was like, oh man, like that, you're good, Cisco, you're good. The one thing though is that as much as I do love Cisco as a techie guy, and I'm just gonna put this out there, I am okay with if they do just make it so he is the techie guy. But I was hoping that this would be a pavement for his powers to come back. So when I was watching it live, I was like, okay, obviously he's gonna go in some kind of vibey-esque thing, and we found out he was just basically using some kind of device to harness all the vibe energy to figure out what happened to Cynthia, aka Gypsy. But I was hoping, knowing that kind of going in and watching it unfold, but not quite knowing how it happened. It would be a path for him like reactivating his powers. I don't know why I necessarily thought that, but you know, it is comic booky, it is comic book, if you know what I mean. So I thought even though he's taken the metahuman cure and that would have cured him at like a molecular level or whatever, I just hope that it would somehow re-trigger it, right? Or like there was some kind of dormant thing and that's what the cure did, because we know Cisco gets back in his vibe suit, but that could have just been for the crisis thing. But then that's confusing as well. But then I guess that was an alternate reality. I don't know, maybe it wasn't. This is confusing. Why was he in his vibe suit again? I want him to get back to vibe. It would be really cool. I know they set up the story, but that story was kind of, and a lot of people felt this, very unbelievable to fans. They wrote it, and I always say this, it's as if they wrote it on a page and they just did it. Like, do you know what I mean? And obviously, you may be thinking, obviously, that's what a show is. You write things down, the actors learn their lines, they do it, but you meant to make it obviously believable as well without feeling rushed. And you know what? I wouldn't mind if they did that again with Cisco getting back his powers, just because I want them again. They did it before and it was kind of unbelievable. And maybe I believe it more this time if they were just like, Cisco has this realization that to become the leader of Team Flash, he needs to accept the vibe powers and be a hero, and he can still not feel burdened with whatever kind of BS they wrote for him, with him kind of exiting it. I'm not going to talk about that too much because I really didn't like the way Cisco kind of cured himself. I definitely feel like that was behind the scenes kind of him umming and ahhing about potentially leaving the show. I could be completely wrong about that, but I felt like it was like a kind of crossroads, like either go that way or that way. Both, like, this storyline will make it work out for whatever the actor wants. But ultimately, Cisco was a badass. He caught up to his doppelganger self, caught him. I thought it was a really cool twist that obviously Cisco would be smart enough to program that kind of vaporizing gun to enact that force field over him. But that scene, as I said, character development and everything like that, with Barry and Iris returning when he was saying how Cynthia taught him to be the man for him to be ready to be the man that he had to become one day, even though he couldn't be with her. I'm remembering these lines awfully. That was very touching. And I was like, Carlos Valdez's acting is always on point, and I really loved it. But I do feel, yet again, not to be too harsh, I just feel like him being accompanied by Camila kind of lessens it a little bit. Do you know what I mean? The scenes that he was in, I don't know. Do you know what I'm feeling? I don't feel like I'm being overcritical there. I feel like it does kind of put a dampener as if it was just someone else, or if they did this whole story differently. I don't know. But to my surprise, they actually did manage to fit a Bloodwork scene in here, and I'm actually glad they did this. It wasn't loads. I didn't need loads, knowing that this was going to be basically Cisco's episode, but Ramsey now is looking purely monstrous. He kind of does look like a messed up vampire, and this kind of goes along with Killer Frost's storyline this episode. She's kind of recklessly going out there, going after him herself. They brought Norvok along, the redeemed Norvok, if you will, because Bloodwork, despite being a little bit quiet, he's popped up now because two of his, I guess, acquaintances or buddies in whatever he runs with these days has been kind of vaporized, well, not vaporized, but like reduced to the blood goo that Bloodwork does to people. But then they decided for Caitlin to go to Bloodwork. And I was actually thinking just before that scene, it's like, okay, as much as I'm loving Killer Frost this season, when are we going to get Caitlin again? And they did bring Caitlin back. But this scene kind of reminded me, as much as I love Caitlin Snow, I feel like Caitlin Snow has been made to feel a lot more uninteresting now. And that's more prominent than ever with Killer Frost coming into it. I really feel like they did such a good job coming up with this whole dual sharing the body thing this season, because it's only, pleasing fans to the degree of if you prefer Caitlyn or if you prefer Killer Frost. Well, now we're just getting the best of both worlds. So as for Ramsey Russo, he spared her, asked her to join him, kind of Darth Vader moment, join me and we'll rule the, eternal life. But yeah, didn't happen. And this, I think, is just meant to appease those who are wanting to make sure there's a little bit of main plot in every episode to make sure we get the setup for, when it ends in episode 8. And that's not far away now. It's crazy how fast things are moving. I also feel like they wouldn't have dropped that kind of Chester Runk kind of energy level stabilizing, if you will, in one of those last scenes, unless they weren't planning on using the Mac again. I mean, I feel like that was built, obviously, knowing, and when I mentioned it in the review back then, I said that this will probably be returning because, as they mentioned in those first episodes, that it was to give Barry essentially the ability to be the thinker, but also a speedster. They're probably mentioning that because the Mac is returning, and maybe it can be used to help Barry figure out something to do with Crisis, speed think his way into a solution. But also, obviously, we have the Edward Nash Harrison Nash stuff as well. So that was ultimately the episode. What would I say? I normally say like that was a decent episode or that was a solid episode of The Flash. I feel like it was an average episode of The Flash. I feel like it wasn't like great. It wasn't amazing. It was just like a kind of fillery-esque feel, but also understandably so, as I've already pointed out. This is kind of one in a season where, you know, you're probably going to be looking forward to get onto the other episodes, and that's probably the perfect way I can put it. But like this video, guys, if you did enjoy it, I'd really appreciate that. Subscribe to this channel if you're brand new. As I said, the Arrow video should be up in a few hours time, just to let this video breathe a little bit. But other than that, everyone, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you speedsters in the next video. Goodbye.